Welcome back to Retro Wednesday at the Titanium Hangar. This is Mike. Today I'm going to talk to you about the top 10 G.I. Joe playsets out there. Most toy lines barely get one playset, and as you know, I've been looking at playsets and from the smaller, more obscure toy lines, but today I want to talk about all these G.I. Joe playsets. Isn't it impressive that you could say that there's a top 10 list of playsets for a toy line? Let's get into it. Starting out with number 10 on this list is the 1984 Vivovac Battle Station. This is a very, very small, early rudimentary playset that packed a couple of features. It had a sort of a cot that could sleep one Joe. It had a tent to keep the weather out, and you had a hanging binoculars, a missile launcher, and a couple of tools such as a shovel. Also a communication device. This is a very low price point toy. It's still cheap to acquire, but it's kind of hard to get 100% complete and unbroken. Still, it's really cool. If you had 2 or 3 of these set up, it would make sense, and it kind of feel like a little MASH setup if you had several of them. Next up is number 9 on the list, and that's the 1989 G.I. Joe Thunderclap. This is one of those combinations of playset and vehicle, which you're going to see a couple of vehicles on this that can double as a playset and one playset that can double as a vehicle, sort of, but this is the only one that is actually designed to be both at the exact same time. This vehicle has 2 small vehicles to carry the big playset, which is a giant cannon, and it has lots of firepower, lots of missiles, and room to accommodate a multitude of figures. There are multiple different setups that you can use to play with this thing or to display it, but it is a bit low on the list because it's probably not the coolest of the gang, but it still gets the job done and is something that there is no other vehicle anywhere near this type of vehicle or playset. I classify it as a playset, and it's in a league of its own. Next on the list is the G.I. Joe General at the number 8 spot. This thing is huge. This thing is massive, and this thing is a vehicle and playset in one, but it's a slow rolling vehicle. It is a landing platform. It is, what is it? It's a base. It's everything in one. Full of firepower and missiles and its own helicopter, this thing, the General, is a massive beast. You could fit so many figures on this. True blue G.I. Joe, massive over-the-top playset and vehicle in one. This thing wins it over. Hard to find complete. Probably pretty expensive. I am not in the market for one because it is so big and probably so expensive. And most G.I. Joe collectors that were in the game in the beginning didn't stay in the game long enough to see this thing. But those who had the opportunity to take part in the General experience enjoyed it. This thing is massive. It is huge. And it can either be a flat landing platform or turn into a giant missile. Number 7 on this list of playsets is the Cobra Missile Command Headquarters. The reason that this cool playset featured such a low rating is simply because it's made almost entirely out of cardboard. This is one ultra rare set that they actually re-released as a special modern version of it, but it still was made of cardboard and had modern figures. For a playset in 1982, it still was pretty cool. It was an exclusive, very hard to find, hard to get your hands on. Came with 3 figures, which are still really hard to get your hands on, even loose. This set is sought after by collectors just because of the rarity, but it still is interesting what they could do with a lot of cardboard back in the day. Number 6 on my list of top G.I. Joe playsets is the Flag. Now, a lot of people would classify the G.I. Joe Flag, the aircraft carrier, as their number 1, but there's a couple reasons that I put it lower on the list, on my list. It is just so huge and massive. Trying to display this thing is a challenge. trying to get the full functionality out of this playset is a challenge. Customizers have made lower platforms, lower levels with wheels on it, but see, that's the thing. You have to customize it. You have to build some sort of standing cabinet to make it functional and usable. I had one of these things and I was happy to sell it off because I didn't feel like I could display it properly and enjoy it to its fullest. But if you do have the space to display this to its fullest and the means to buy one of these nowadays for a complete one is quite a bit of money, then you could enjoy this to its fullest extent, and if so, it is awesome. It is a feat of toy making ingenuity that they figured out how to make such a big playset for $109. In fact, I don't think they could make this playset today at all, even as a HasLab project. Next on my list is the G.I. Joe Rolling Thunder. I have to admit, this is a vehicle, but the vehicle of this sheer massive size has to be considered a playset, and it is awesome, packed with so many features. This massive vehicle that obviously doubles as a playset houses a ton of figures, 2 massive missiles that have small missiles inside of it. It also has a ton of guns and a ton of firepower, extra vehicle, a ramp that you can roll that vehicle out, and this thing is just a ton of fun. You know, the thing about this is I constantly keep finding parts for it everywhere. If you have one of these, making it complete could be a challenge, but on the flip side, I don't know why I have so many parts and pieces for this, because I no longer have one. The fact that it houses so many figures with all of those excellent turrets, you're going to need to buy more figures just to fill this figure up for an excellent display. Next up on the list is the 1985 Transportable Tactical Battle Platform. It takes the number 4 slot on my list for a multitude of reasons. This little playset packs a big punch with a massive amount of space to store and display figures. It has a landing pad. It has an area below. If you wanted to, you could put boats and stuff underneath it. Has lots of missile launchers and a control room that seats 2 figures. This is one amazing piece. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say that this playset is nowhere near as good as the flag, but this is affordable. It's easy to get your hands on. It's relatively easy to complete this set, and it still packs a big punch. But in my mind, I look at this as a complementary piece to your flag. And if you don't have a flag, well, this will fill a bit of the void, so you have something in the ocean. Number 3 on my list is the G.I. Joe Headquarters Command Center. This is one of the most prominent playsets in the G.I. Joe line. I think almost everybody who collected G.I. Joe somewhere along the line has either owned one of these or had their hands on one of these. They got access to one of these because they are so extra common and they look pretty good. I will have to admit, a few years ago, I probably would not have classified this playset so high, but the display ability of this set is undeniable. The fact that you could fit so many figures in there. There are so many activities they can take part in within this set, and of course it's so iconic from the show. You can park a tank, you can park an AWE striker, you can work on your AWE striker. This playset does it all, and I was off-put by just the fact that it felt like just an open playset, but that creates a great world for displayability. There's no doubt that this playset is iconic, it is cool, easily accessible, and still relatively affordable in 2020 to buy and display all of your figures. Still a bit too small to accommodate the new 6-inch line, but if you really want to stretch it, it would work as a possible display piece. It still would not be anywhere near scale. Number 2 on my list is the G.I. Joe Defiant Space Shuttle Launch Complex. And this thing is massive, it's impressive, but I have a slight confession to make. After years of hearing all of my G.I. Joe buddies talk about how awesome this Defiant is, going way out of their way to track one down, I thought they were wasting their time. I didn't think it was worth it. I finally saw one in person and I understood what all the fuss was about. This thing is amazing on 10 different levels. Well, technically 3, but it's a great playset, and there is no way you can call this just a vehicle because it accommodates so many figures and does so much. Not only do you get the whole rolling mechanism and you can take off and launch these 2 massive shuttles, but you get 2 massive shuttles with it. It is great. They accommodate a ton of figures. Each one of these shuttles in itself is an outstanding vehicle. It would be a standalone by itself, which actually one is, but there's 2 and it's included with this. This thing, it just G.I. Joe blows your mind. Hasbro went big. They went big on everything, went big on the flag. But the thing about this is it's not so big that you can't put it away in a corner or somewhere when you're not using it. If you displayed it in its compact mode, you still see all of the awesomeness hidden in there or held within, and you could still use it as a display in this mode. It would still show a ton of figures. I think this is an outstanding set. I really kick myself for passing on one in person. I was so impressed. I was starstruck by this thing, and I still didn't buy it, and I still kick myself today. The number 1 playset on my list, with absolutely no doubt whatsoever, there is no contest here. It's the G.I. Joe Cobra Terrordrome with the Firebat. This playset was one of the best playsets ever made in all of history. And the reason for it is that A, it looked good, it matched its on-screen counterpart. B, it displayed figures, so many figures, you just had what felt like a million peg holes in this thing to place figures. I know there is a set number of peg holes to put the figures in there, but it is massive. It's also not too big. It's not too big that you can't display it and display other stuff around it. It doesn't take up nearly as much space as the flag, but yet it commands a presence. It has that commanding presence. It has the silo opening to launch out the Firebat with an excellent mechanism. It has so many little features. You could set up a ton of different play features. Look, you can fit a trouble bubble on there, and the trouble bubble looks tiny. I could sit and talk about this Terrordrome for at least 10 to 15 minutes, so I'll probably have to do that in a completely separate video, but I do believe this is the greatest playset ever, and will probably hold the title for many, many years to come. And yes, I have a cell barge, and this still beats it. So what do you think about this list of G.I. Joe top 10 playsets? What playset is your favorite? What would you have put on this list that I did not include? Like and subscribe, and Tiberium Hanger out.